Look like you're a little depressed. We've been here before, you know. Y'all remember? 2012? We've been here before. So don't be sad. Don't be depressed. This is a bump in the road. FNMs. Fired up and ready to go. Fired up. All right, now you're sounding like FNMs. Now y'all gotta excuse my voice a little bit. It ain't cooperating quite right. So if I call on you to help me, I need your help. Mr. Party Leader, Mr. Michael Clifton Pintard. Boy, y'all don't know. Come a long, long way. Struggle in the vineyard. Took on some serious fights for this party. Battle tested, bruised, but determined. And here today, the party leader, the next Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Congratulations to you, sir, your beautiful wife, Berlice, and your daughter, Michaela, and to your entire family, and certainly to your mother, Ms. Benson, who I know must be so proud. Party officers, MCMs, former Prime Minister, freedom fighters, executive officers, council members, delegates, FNMs, Bahamians everywhere, good evening, and welcome to this special 50th anniversary celebration in convention as we honor the past, celebrate our achievements, and chart the future. FNMs, the legacy of our great party is as remarkable as the struggle as it is in our successes. Our founding fathers and mothers have left us a rich legacy built upon sacrifice and inclusion of all persons willing to work together in this movement to build a better and more open and progressive Bahamas. Our founding members would have suffered ugly bias and exclusion because they stood for their principles. Today, in opposition, there's credible evidence to suggest that this destructive mentality is back with unjustified terminations of services and employment contracts, particularly in beaches and parks and social services in urban renewal. Much ado about nothing. And you listen to the Minister for Social Services, who gave an explanation for the terminations in urban renewal in particular. I don't believe he believed himself. He certainly didn't sound believable to me, and I'm sure to most Bahamians. As was said earlier, pure rank victimization. Yes, FNMs, tribal politics is back in full display by the masters of the game. And we must continue to be valiant, vigilant, and expose and discourage that type of behavior. We must continue to fight for the equality of access for our foot soldiers. In fact, delegates, this is why the Public Procurement Act was so critical to be passed before the end of our term, and the tight provisions in that act, drafted the way they were. They're intended to remove the temptation for any politician to simply award contracts to friends, families, and others without a fair and competitive process, so that the Bahamian people get the best deal for their money. You know, it was laughable to hear the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Tourism and Aviation try to justify and explain the granting of a no-bid contract for the travel visa program, which he criticized so heavily while in opposition. You all remember his frequent tirades about Canoe and Atlantic Medical that were granted contracts under the last administration? Well, according to the Deputy Prime Minister, his no-bid contracts were special. They were justified because of the emergency, the urgency of the decision to change contractors. Well, I wonder, maybe our former Prime Minister can tell us. He's a medical doctor. What is the urgency of this decision today? Why was it urgent now when we're on the low part of the pandemic and not when we were in the height of the pandemic? Can we say hypocrite? The Deputy Prime Minister went on to say that the Ministry of Tourism is not subject to government procurement rules, and thus he does not have to follow them. Well, I suggest that the Deputy Prime Minister has another look at that act, because the provisions in the act are very clear. And to be honest, it's just good business practice. And I'm sure, as a businessman, he is very well aware. But this is not the first time that the Deputy Prime Minister has ignored the provisions of this act. You all remember the Ragged Island Airport terminal that he bragged about completing just within 1 month of being in office? Well, I don't know if it's true or not. I leave that to you all who might have been to Ragged Island. But ask him, where are the procurement documents? Where is the public tender for that project that he so bragged about? Could it be that again they ignored the law? I'm not going to make that accusation, but I leave it to you. See, these guys really believe that there's one rule for them and another rule for everybody else. And the Bahamian people are left holding the empty bag. FNMs, we must continue to be vigilant. FNMs, tonight I stand humbly on the shoulders of our firstborn, Ambassador Maurice Elijah Moore. And I am so happy to see him tonight. This is a gentleman who has been and stood in the gap for so many of us. I know certainly my predecessor, Ken Russell, myself, and now Kwesi Thompson have all benefited from the legacy of Maurice Elijah Moore. And he is still with us and freely shares his wisdom and experience, both nationally and more particularly in Grand Bahama. Thank you, sir. And thank you to all of our surviving founding patriots and those who've gone on before, MCMs and freedom fighters, for your sacrifice. FNMs, as these veterans grow older, we need to reinforce their ranks by not only filling existing meritorious council member vacancies, but by also increasing their numbers to further take advantage of the depth of experience and wisdom that is available to us. There are just too many knowledgeable and deserving members of our party not being engaged simply because they've not been asked, not been invited. Tomorrow, we will have an opportunity to fix this, and I recommend to the convention approval of the proposal to increase the number of MCMs from 100 to 200. FNMs, let's recognize and reward our faithful members. Ladies and gentlemen, from time to time, circumstances force us to delay our progress, and in other instances, diverts our course to address pressing emergencies. The period from September 2019 to September 2020 was such a period. Yet, we in the Free National Movement have remained focused on our core principles and on our vision for a modern, inclusive Bahamas. With this principle in mind, we bring our FNM ship of state to port once again to evaluate our progress and heal our wounds, to take on a fresh, vibrant crew, to hear from and support our veteran soldiers, and to chart a new course for the future of our party and our country, being ever faithful to the wider Bahamian people we serve and represent. FNMs, during our last term, we placed much emphasis on sustaining and growing our principal industries, tourism and financial services, with some level of success that I think we can be proud of. We also initiated new programs to develop and grow small businesses, education, social, and physical infrastructure. Even before Dorian and the pandemic occurred, which admittedly threw us off track, we recognized a global trend towards isolation and nationalism by developed nations and trading blocs that made us more vulnerable to unexpected events and regulatory shocks. To place ourselves in the best position possible to take advantage of these trends, we put capital in the hands of innovative and creative entrepreneurs, encouraged and facilitated training of people in use of technology to compete globally, improved the ease of doing business locally and internationally, facilitated the development of new lines of business through targeted landmark legislation and policies, like the globally recognized Digital Assets and Registered Exchanges Act 2020, the DARE Act, that helped to attract the largest digital asset exchange company to the Bahamas. And this, yeah, we should clap for that. It's a major development. And they're more interested in coming to the Bahamas as a result of the work that we did in respect to that act. So we are actually on the cusp, possibly, of creating a whole new subsector in financial services. The central bank's Sand Dollar Project, another global leading development for which the Bahamas received international acclaim. It is these initiatives that are providing the current government the anchor and headroom to hold on while storms continue to roll. In private and international interviews, the government has admitted as much under the banner of governments are continuous. Convenient, but of course, we agree. Whether it's the COVID pandemic rules, virtual classrooms to keep our children safe, or prudent fiscal decisions made to secure families and stimulate the domestic economy during turbulent and difficult times, the FNM has remained faithful to its mandate and delivered for the Bahamian people. In 6 short months, however, we are already seeing signs of regression under this new administration, whose stubborn pride will not permit them to adjust course in the face of overwhelming evidence to justify doing so. For instance, it is a shame this government did not recognize early on that the former administration was on the right track with its initiatives and policies to mitigate expected increases to cost of living due to global supply chain issues. If they had listened to the voice of caution from the opposition, the University of the Bahamas economic researchers, and they told a story on those University of the Bahamas people, by the way, the central bank and leading retailers and experts, they would have delayed the disastrous 100% tax increase on bread basket items and medicines. 100% increase, which combined with rising import prices is proving to be a heavy burden on the backs of struggling Bahamians. Indeed, this policy decision is making our situation so much worse than it had to be. It is interesting to listen to the supporters of the other side who were so excited about this reduction or so-called reduction in value-added tax until it set in and they went to the grocery store and all of a sudden they realized that instead of paying less for the things that we buy, we're paying more. Bahamians, let us pray for those involved in global conflicts around the world, particularly Russia and Ukraine, that a peaceful solution may yet be found. Hopefully, these global tensions and risks from new waves of COVID does not significantly impact the tourism rebound, which this government is banking on to correct their lapse in prudent fiscal judgment. Convention delegates, the headwinds the previous administration warned us about prior to elections are here and are being made worse by the government's lack of focused attention and uncoordinated policies. The announcement that new taxes would have to be introduced to make up for the shortfall, the revenue shortfall as a result of the VAT rate adjustment was immediately walked back by the Minister for Economic Affairs, and a day later, completely disavowed by the Minister of Finance, who said he was unaware of such a proposal. These contradictions must be giving our bond holders and the markets, our creditors, the fits, as we say. And this is reflected in the volatility of our bonds that are trading below market. Just recently, there was an unprecedented statement from the Ministry of Finance attacking the hardworking staff at the Treasury and finance offices throughout the system for standing up for their rights. My colleague earlier spoke about how this government courted so heavily the public service and unions, only to be disappointed. The facts are that not only was the career path for accounting officers approved by the Ministry of Public Service, the Public Service Commission, and by the Cabinet in 2020, the promotions, salaries, and back pay that flowed from that new structure was also approved. It is unfair to blame those hardworking public officers for the government's inability to pay increments and vendors as promised due to their bad policy decisions. And it's bad precedent. Everybody knows the buck stops with the minister and the cabinet. But again, they have no shame. And they're looking for cover. Anybody, blame anybody, anything. Shame on them. Of course, both the Minister for Public Service, who has so much to say in his voice notes, I don't know when he has time to actually govern, and maybe what I'm about to say explains it, but both the Minister for the Public Service and the Minister of Finance claimed that they were completely unaware of this statement from the Ministry of Finance. Well, if you can believe that a revenue loss of $7 million a day, according to them, as a result of industrial action, vendors not being paid, and promised increments having to be delayed, then I think they believe that we are a lot more gullible than we actually are. Are we really to believe that Cabinet was unaware that a statement was being made? Where was everybody? Dubai, maybe? Y'all saw my speech. Or maybe we're all thinking the same thing. But speaking of which, the government needs to get its story together. Did it cost $1.5 million to put on the Dubai experience? Or was it $1 million? Or as claimed today or yesterday, is it $600,000? You know, we truly just cannot make this stuff up. And it causes us to wonder, just who is driving this train? Especially since everyone seems to be unaware. Ladies and gentlemen, you will hear over the next few days the many accomplishments of the FNM during our last term. You will hear about advancements in education with universal preschool and University of the Bahamas and BTVI access and funding, scholarships, social interaction and support with food distribution programs worth over $100 million, tax breaks to help ease the cost of living increase, jobs and family support programs, economic empowerment programs worth over $400 million to stimulate the economy, and fiscal control and transparency legislation and policies that are being commended today by leading foreign and domestic economic and transparency experts as the most proactive initiatives outside of a structured IMF program. You know, I recall having many skirmishes with the now Prime Minister about the policies, the economic policies that we were pursuing. And I always told him, you're a lawyer, stick to law. Because the reality is, the policies that we put in place, the legislation that we passed, and we passed a lot of it, surrounding transparency and control, was all to put us ahead of the game, ahead of the pack, and to be proactive in response to what we saw on the horizon as a fiscal challenge. While this is all very well and good, FNMs, it is in the ordinary course of governance and what an enlightened Bahamian public should expect from their government. We don't need a pat on the back for doing our jobs. They should expect us to raise the Bahamas standing as the best and most envied small island state on this side of the Atlantic. And we did that. Our reputation, both domestically and internationally, improved significantly over the last administration. Yet, we are painfully reminded that we were still voted out of office on September 16 by tremendous numbers and low voter turnout. Now, that low voter turnout is an interesting thing because it says, and the government should recognize, that the Bahamian people still don't trust them.
Check, 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 check. One, one.
Yeah. So as I was saying, that low voter turnout demonstrates to this government that they do not enjoy the confidence of the majority of the Bahamian public. You see, FNMs, the truth is that we were not voted out because of lack of good governance, lack of confidence, but because we allowed the perception of arrogance to once again be painted on us as reality. And that perception stuck. We must learn the lessons and keep them in mind, Honorable Leader, and our new chairmen. We must remember not to leave our people behind again, as we tend to do in our haste to progress our national development goals and create opportunity for all. We must hear and consider the disappointments and hopes of our people as we deliberate, keeping them front and center in our thoughts while crafting policies, not just to progress the national interests, but also to empower our people with real and sustainable opportunities to participate in them. Fellow delegates, this is our task and our challenge: to keep this caretaker government accountable and on track, doing what they said that they would do, to ensure that they do not get away with trying to water down the transparency and reporting regimes put in place, because as someone said, it's too hard. We must ensure that the temptation to disenfranchise Bahamians because of their views and political affiliations are exposed and condemned and challenged in court if necessary. We must call them out on their attempts to roll back 4 years of good work and progress on the vision of the people as expressed in our manifesto, which was deemed consistent and in line with the National Development Plan by its lead authors. Don't mind the noise from the other side. They love to say that we abandoned the National Development Plan. Absolutely incorrect. Absolutely incorrect. When we came to office, one of the first things that was done was to make a comparison, an analysis of our manifesto against the National Development Plan. And it was judged to be 98% in compliance with that document. So don't let the PLP fool you into thinking that we were being petty and partisan and not follow that document. That was the culmination of tremendous work by a wide cross-section of professionals, and it would have been foolhardy of us to have ignored it. Ladies and gentlemen, as I take my exit from public life in this season, I urge you to remain focused on why this party was formed, why you are a part of this party, and why we are here tonight to ensure its continued stability, relevance, and contribution. We must close ranks around our former parliamentarians and our current parliamentarians, party officers and supporters, because this government will seek to tarnish and denigrate the value and authenticity of the work we have done by picking off FNMs one by one, and we've seen it already. They will do their best to throw mud at everyone and everything, to create the perception of corruption and mismanagement, to disguise their own failings, and as an excuse for not doing what they promised and what is right. We must expose them, FNMs, forward, united. They will encourage us to attack each other, to create division and separation, to create instability and animosity within our ranks, and distract us from their actions or lack thereof. Stay focused, FNMs, forward, united. Our leader and his team will require our full and undivided support while they regroup and reshape this party. With an overwhelming minority in the parliament, and perhaps the most biased speaker that I certainly have seen in my lifetime. I tell my wife all the time, I know I'll be thrown out the house many times. They will need our collective strength, resources, and prayers to give them the courage and strength to stand and fight valiantly against all evil and injustice. FNMs, forward, united. As I close, I wish to once again thank my wonderful wife, Sonia, our children, Kevin, Nathalie, and Anthony, my incredible team, and former constituents who are so dear to me. It wasn't about politics for me. It was about relationships. They have been my strength these last few years of testing. I want them to know that I love them more than I can ever say. And I thank all of you for being there and believing in me. Thank you to the Free National Movement and the people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas for giving me the opportunity of a lifetime to serve our country on the national and international stage. God's plan for each of you and for me must be fulfilled. So be not discouraged. Hold your heads high. We have much, much more work to do. FNMs, together we can accomplish so much, and we must on behalf of the Bahamian people. Forward, united, with hope, courage, and the help of Almighty God. FNMs, I am in no way tired, and I am not going anywhere. While I take a step back so others can step forward and shine and take us the next mile of the way, I intend to be right here, making my contribution, keeping our leader and officers in line if they need, because you know my mouth ain't shy. And I encourage each and every one of you to make a commitment today that you will not shirk from the responsibility, that you will not backpedal on your commitment to this wonderful organization. The Bahamian people need you, your party needs you, and we need you. FNMs, FNMs, happy anniversary. God bless you. God bless the Free National Movement. And God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you. She's a beast, I'm a bigger beast, and we raking. Up one with motorbikers, we scraping. Right now I feel like whining. Shake that bump up on me, cause we grinding. She's a beast, I'm a bigger beast, and we raking. Up one with motorbikers, we scraping. Yeah. I've been on these rocky roads before, seen a few open doors, never learned. They reject me, but still I come up for more persistent. This is what I do. To myself I say it true. I don't worry about you, how that bird don't make a soup. I come here to carry on bad, mash up the place we mad.